Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for taking out the time to join us today. I'm Radha Parikh, an 8th grader at BMS, and we also have two of our other student council representatives with us today.
Hi, I'm Anahita Malhotra, and I'm a 7th grader.
I'm Asher Hardis. I'm in 6th grade.
Thank you. So, as you may be knowing, the Student Council has been working hard to spread awareness about prevalent issues throughout the entire year. And in honor of women empowerment and women's history this month, we are thrilled to introduce a panel of accomplished individuals who come from diverse backgrounds, professions, and ages to share their experiences with us today.
We hope to get a multifaceted perspective about women empowerment from the women leaders in our community. We will be asking the panel members a series of questions. Afterward, we'll open the floor to any other questions from students or teachers. So without further ado, we'll start with our guest speakers introducing themselves. Ms. Wolkoff, if you could take it from here.
Sure. I'm Rebecca Wolkoff. I graduated from Beechwood in 2009, then did my undergrad at the University of Michigan, became convinced that energy storage was the way to get more renewables onto the grid, and so went to Stanford to study fluids because I thought compressed air was going to be the next energy storage thing. I was definitely wrong, and so my first company was that I joined was a battery energy storage company called Demand Energy, where I was a data scientist and a software engineer for them for a couple of years until we were acquired by Enel, which is the Italian utility. It's the 6th largest utility in the world. And now I'm the director of data science at NLX, which is sort of the division that deals with energy storage and solar and getting those onto our grid. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I'm really excited, by what the Student Council is doing.
Thank you, Dr. Zhang.
Hey, I'm Yusi Zhang. I was briefly in high school with Rebecca. I graduated in 2012 now, which feels like forever ago. After I graduated, I stayed in Cleveland for college. I went to Case Western, and then I went to Vanderbilt and Nashville for medical school, and then moved again to be here at Duke, where I'm doing a residency in ophthalmology to hopefully soon, it's been forever, soon be an eye surgeon. But this year I take care of patients in the hospital. And like Rebecca said, I'm super excited about all that the Student Council has put together, and really, really excited to hear and talk about women empowerment.
Thank you. Mrs. Roth, if you can.
Oh, yeah, thank you for inviting me. I'm Shelley Roth. I'm president of Pierre's Ice Cream, also a Beechwood grad in 1974. Following my graduation at Beechwood, I attended WashU in St. Louis for 2 years, and then graduated from University of Michigan with a degree in business. Following that, I moved to New York City, and I worked at Atlantic Records, and enjoyed that experience, learned a lot about marketing and promotion. And it was at a time when my father, who owned Pierre's Ice Cream, was working on his succession plan. My brother had been accepted to medical school to become an ophthalmologist, so we have that in common, yeah. So my dad, like by default, chose his daughter, but it took a lot of courage back in 1979 to invite a daughter to be his understudy in business. He and I worked side by side through the 80s, and then I acquired the business from him in 1991 and continue to operate and manage the business here in Cleveland. And thank you for inviting me to join. This is so fun and awesome. So great job, guys.
Thank you for being here. Dr. Karan. Okay.
Hi, I'm Kara Kamaran. I am unfortunately not a Beechwood graduate. I am a professor of women's studies at the University University of Akron. I'm originally from Michigan, so please don't hold that against me, you Ohio folks. I teach a variety of classes on women's studies, queer studies, masculinity studies, feminist theory, a whole host of other things. So I'm excited to talk to you all about women's empowerment today.
Now we can start off with the questions. Radha, if you can take it from here.
Yep, thank you so much for your introductions. You've really accomplished so many great things that we can only imagine of. And so where you are today is really incredible and something that as students we all look upon. But how do you think your experiences at Beechwood or elsewhere in your early years of education have impacted the journey ahead and where you are today?
I'll comment on the panel discussion. It can be, if anybody wants to speak, you can just go. If not, we'll let the person asking the question just select someone to start. Okay, so we just kind of can move forward quickly.
I can start. Oh,
Yeah.
Beechwood, I think, set an incredible foundation for me moving forward. In terms of women empowerment specifically, I think one thing that was incredible as early as middle school, no one ever discouraged me from doing things that were like not necessarily typical for like a little girl to do, like join the robotics club or like do science Olympiad. And I was kind of thinking back to how unaware I was in middle school about like the separation of genders and how unusual it might be for someone, for me to be like the only girl in my AP chemistry class during my like senior year. And I think just having that environment to learn in and learn from was a blessing, and y'all are really lucky to have the faculty, the teachers, the support to really encourage anyone to do whatever they really are interested in.
I would agree that my experience was very, very positive in my years at Beechwood, and I applaud all of you because the first step I took was being active in student council. And I guess my advice, because my best memories are from my extracurricular activities, both at Beechwood and University of Michigan. So I would encourage you to take advantage of all the extras that come with your school system. And when you go to college, take advantage of those because it's so interesting. For example, I was on the girls' basketball team, such a great experience to be on a team sport. I was editor of the yearbook my senior year. Still, that experience plays into what I do every day here in the business. And then when I went to University of Michigan, I was the business manager for the theater group. So there too, it was just a great hands-on way to learn besides just academics. So I would encourage you to take advantage of what Beechwood has because it's really incredible.
Yeah, I would totally second taking advantage of all the extracurriculars, robotics club in middle school and high school, because I think I started a little early and was really, my mother was like, she knew that I was into math and science and knew that Beechwood High School had a robotics club, and they were really welcoming, even though I was an 8th grader. Got involved with that. Mr. Davis inspired me with, I think we did Lego robotics in that class, and we built mousetrap cars, which was really cool. That was like, I don't know, I think back, and that was kind of the inspiration that made me go down the engineering path in the first place. And for those opportunities to be available to everyone and be welcoming to everyone in Beechwood was really important early on. and definitely just encouraged me later on. I actually think Beechwood had, very good gender mixtures in a lot of the different activities. And I remember my senior year math class, it was definitely 50-50 girls and guys. But when I graduated and went to college, that definitely wasn't the case. And it encouraged me, though, to I did the solar car team at University of Michigan, even though there weren't a lot of other women doing it, because I already, had that awesome team experience at Beechwood, and it was great to continue it.
I would just add that I did not go to Beechwood, and I had very different experiences in junior high and high school, where it was very clear that like girls were not really supposed to be interested in science and math. And like, while I was, still who I am, like very much a nerd, basically, who took all AP classes and did all of those things, the encouragement that I got always came from my women teachers who were teaching like English and history and the humanities stuff. And then most of my men teachers in science and in math just basically like ignored us. So it wasn't like we were explicitly told like girls don't take calculus. You just didn't get the encouragement I did get from my women English teachers. And so as I continued my education, I found myself like naturally leaning towards where I had mentors, where I had teachers that were willing to like do outside work with me and sign me up for extra classes and help me out. And so by the time I got to college, like I haven't taken a math class since I was a junior in high school. Like if you were to ask me to do math today, I would just be like, calculator? It's just not something that I ever got encouragement for and so then didn't pursue myself. And I'm not saying that if I had had a nice math teacher in high school, I would suddenly be a math professor instead of a history professor, but that like not undersell the impact that welcoming environments and positive mentors can have on you.
Well, yeah, I think as students, our goal it should be to make school an inclusive place where everyone should like be able to learn and do what they want. Beechwood is a very diverse school, so it's important for Beechwood to be inclusive and encourage everybody, and um, it makes it so you get to hear from a very diverse group of students and learn with them. But that said, what are some of the obstacles you have faced and overcome throughout your life?
I guess I'll start with answering that because out of the group, I have the longest history of potential adversity. And I think all of you will find at times in your life there is adversity. There are just going to be times where there are huge challenges. And my advice is just don't let those get in the way of your dreams and your goals. And when you face a challenge, know that it's probably a blip on the radar screen, and over time you'll overcome those. And to help overcome things, one thing I've learned is really to keep looking forward. If you hit a speed bump, if you hit a problem, don't keep looking back and ruminating over an issue. Just move forward, accept any challenge. After you succeed from some challenges, it makes you feel stronger, gives you more confidence. in everything you do, and you will have all those experiences and use them as good learning examples. Specifically, too, for someone like me, when I started in the business, it was, the late 70s, early 80s. And first of all, dads didn't invite daughters at that time to be in business. So some of the experiences that I had where I wasn't taken seriously, it was like, oh, isn't that cute? Sal's daughter is working in the company. And, so I had to overcome those kind of doubters. And but you just prove yourself. You prepare just like you do at school. Preparation is important, proving that you have a competency in what you do. And I think with all those skills, you'll overcome all the challenges.
I echo everything that you just said. I think that like everyone's gonna hit obstacles. It's just a matter of when, and then it's a matter of how you decide to recover from it. And I feel like I remember, since Mr. Holman is on this call, I remember distinctly moving to Beechwood in middle school, which was a hard time to move. And I think I got like a B in your class. And I remember being so devastated at that time for getting a poor grade in that class, and didn't have the same like support system that I had in elementary school with all my friends. They were all gone. And so I really had to find other people to turn to. And my family was really helpful at that time. And I'd like just started making other friends at that time to be able to like overcome outside of school this like sense of like me not being able to fit into Beechwood. And I think something that I've learned has helped me overcome obstacles is to find the people who will always care about you and will always push you to be your best, even at times where, in retrospect, to be in a social studies class, like what did that really mean? But at that time, it was a big deal. And so having my family around and having the few friends that I had to, remind me that school is not the only thing that exists in the world. And I can think of many, many other instances in my, short-lived career, my school career, where there have been challenges that I've thought like, oh wow, like am I really cut out for this? Like, am I really gonna be a good doctor? And all of those times having somebody who I could, just go to and get my mind off of things and reflect on those things and move forward, I think was really, really helpful to have.
Let me just add here, a B is not a bad grade. It is not a bad grade at all. And
it's not.
That's one of the things that I want to tell all of you is that don't be afraid of failure. That like sometimes you're going to hit these obstacles and, we can say like, oh, just keep working. Sometimes obstacles are insurmountable. Like sometimes it's something outside of your control and something just doesn't work out the way you want it to. And so first of all, don't be afraid of trying. Don't be afraid of failing. I literally cannot tell you how many things I have failed at in my life because like not failing means you're just not trying new things. And like, do not fall into a trap where you only want to do things you're already good at, because that limits you so much to all of these amazing learning experiences that are out there. So you have to both understand that you are going to fail sometimes. A B is not failing, but you will fail some things sometimes. Like it's just not going to work out. Like I can, I have a file of rejection letters from a variety of jobs, journals, book editors, and so when I failed, then that would mean never trying to get my work out there, never applying for another grant or another fellowship, or, you're going to fail. but the way you deal with that, I think, shows both perseverance and also the wisdom to know, like, sometimes something is just not going to work out and you have to just try something else. And so don't be afraid to get B's. Don't be afraid to get C's, even if it's a class that you have no idea how to do. But, you know, keep trying. I hate that Yoda saying where he's like, do or do not, there is no try. There is try, and try is very important, and you should keep trying new things, even if you're not always going to be good at it right away and it's not always going to work out.
Yeah, I actually did fail my first English paper in high school. I got 50% in honors English on that first paper, and it like scared the crud out of me. But yeah, anyway, if that happens to you, stick with it. Like, I still passed English. It was fine. And I didn't, you don't need to drop out of something that's hard or unexpected. I would also encourage everyone to kind of stick with, the only way you learn is to keep at it, even if it's really, really challenging. I would also maybe just touch on sometimes the obstacles you are going to run into aren't super clear, or there's not always a clear solution. I haven't experienced probably nearly as much, like adversity or sexism as I'm sure other folks have in my field. And I feel very lucky, to be where I am in my field and where the world is today. But, I've had issues with coworkers trying to like keep me from doing new things and prevent me from growing as a leader and growing into my role at my job. And I just recommend, when you encounter someone like that, back to what UC said, rely on the people who have been supporting you. If you need someone to tell you you're not, crazy, you're doing the right thing, and take the high road. Like, it's so tempting to, tell mean things back to the person who's doing mean things to you, but like, it's never worth the fallout. It's never worth burning bridges. It's just like, you always come out on top if you act professionally, act responsibly, and keep being you and keep doing what you're doing, kind of regardless of what people who might be putting you down think.
Talking about journeys and obstacles in life, what are some moments that stand out and what do they mean to you?
I remember when I was in grad school, actually even before that, I remember when I was in undergrad, having a professor ask me if I was a feminist or not. And that was something that like I had never actually really thought of before when I was, a 20-year-old version of me. And I remember telling her, no, I was not a feminist, because I felt like I hadn't done anything to like earn that label. Like, to me, both of my parents were very sort of activist oriented. They were both like union people. And like, to me, someone who was a feminist was someone who had like gone out there and tried to like do something or change something. And I was a 20-year-old college student who just like played video games and drank beer with my friends. Like, I hadn't done anything yet to like earn that. And I'll never forget, my professor at the time was just like, well, saying you're a feminist is a form of feminist activism. And like, my little 20-year-old brain was like, oh my God, like, saying I'm a feminist is a form of feminist activism? Like, that's amazing. I don't even have to get off the couch to do that. Like, I can do that right from my own dining room. Like, and I loved that idea so much that just trying to remove some of the stigma from saying you're a feminist is a form of activism. And like, that labels as much as we might sometimes dislike them because they can feel limiting to us, can also be very powerful when they're labels that you choose for yourself. And so that really blew my mind. And then by the time I was in grad school and I was having some issues with a very sexist professor who was telling me not to write about feminism, that was journalism and history, and like just generally being not helpful. By that point, I had enough of my own confidence and I had felt empowered enough that I went around him. Like, I was like, okay, well, who else can I talk to? Like, I just need to find a different advisor. Like, I don't want to do this. So I'm going to, find someone else I can work with. And I did. And it worked out for me because I ended up, getting my PhD in history by writing about feminism and punk rock. So that's my little story for this.
I did an internship with a utility, and it was a miserable project that was trying to improve customer satisfaction with customers' utility bills. And I can't tell you how hard that is when you see your utility bill and it's higher than you expect it to be. How do you improve someone's attitude towards that? Sort of felt a little like we were set up to fail. And it was a really miserable summer with, not super helpful folks from within the company or outside the company. And it sort of opened my eyes as to how many, there's way more opportunities out there than you think. And so kind of two pieces of advice from this. One, sometimes you just got to stick through it and you do what you have to do to finish it, but learn from whatever that obstacle was, whether it's a person or, a challenge you have to overcome, and think about in the future, not just what you could have done in that situation, but what other situations are there for you to explore? That was like one of the reasons I went to Stanford. I'd been in a 5-year Michigan program to get my master's degree, and it just occurred to me that this was not suiting my needs. I wanted to study alternative energy, and Michigan wasn't offering the classes that I wanted, even though it was 2013 or 2012. And so I looked elsewhere around the country for who had the classes I wanted, and I found it, and was successful at it. So yeah, sometimes you just got to think outside, maybe look at other countries for whatever you want to do. It exists out there.
I think one thing that comes to mind is when I applied to colleges. So I'm the oldest of a lot of kids, and my parents weren't particularly familiar with the college system in the United States because I was not born in the US. And so when we applied, I kind of didn't know how to approach it, and I think I only applied maybe 5 or 6 places, and I had one reach school, and then my safety school was going to be Case Western because of a tuition benefit I had there. And I remember really, really wanting to go to Yale, and I was dead set on going to Yale. And then when the day came and I was ultimately rejected from Yale, I remember being so devastated. And then didn't know, I felt like it was a representation of me as a person up to that point. And in retrospect, that failure, that obstacle was probably the best thing that could have happened to me, because little did I know, I already knew so many people who were at Case Western, and those people helped get me the research opportunities, the the like insider information about classes that I should or shouldn't take, the like best extracurriculars to get involved in college. And if I had gone somewhere where I didn't know anyone, it would have been an incredibly different situation and probably an uphill battle the whole time. But at that time of that rejection letter, I remember being so devastated and like almost paralyzed. But in retrospect, like taking a step back from that and then sitting down and really saying like, what things can I gain from the situation that I didn't expect to be in, was something that like I think I learned a level of like resilience at that point. And then also learned that even when things don't end up the way that you want them to begin with, like if you go into every situation like anticipating that you're going to try to make the best of it all, then I think good things end up happening. And so even when you stumble upon these obstacles, like putting your foot forward again, taking that next step again, and then really trying to like think about like, well, like how do I make this the best situation that I can, is something that I learned at that time. And I remember in like middle school and high school, like not really quite understanding that. And it takes some time to like get to know who you are and gain that confidence in yourself. And I think that was one big step that I took. So.
And I guess my experience that I would share relates to what I encountered in our business when I first moved back from New York City. And that was the location we were at was in what is now Midtown. We were at 65th and Carnegie. And Cleveland at the time had defaulted. It was not the downtown. Businesses were exiting downtown. Companies were exiting Midtown. The area was very blighted. And we had some decisions to make as a company. What should we do long term? Our facility, we had outgrown it. It was aged and very inefficient. So we started to look at opportunities to have a long-range plan and possibly move out of this area into the suburbs or other parts of the region. And I guess one lesson I learned is, we could have taken the easy way out and just picked up and moved and found something that was pretty, ready, that we would have just had to make some upgrades, but it would have accommodated a longer range plan for us. But instead, we decided to reinvest in the neighborhood, acquired this 8-acre parcel that we now have our facility at. And just the heavy lifting it took to get that project going, because once we decided that it was a good idea, then we found there were environmental issues with the land that we had to overcome. We cleaned up the environmental problems. We did all new construction, and that had a lot of challenges. But overall, we felt it wasn't the easiest decision, and it wasn't even the most financially beneficial decision. But we felt it also made a big statement for the community, and that it was a win-win ultimately for the company and the community. So we've been here now since '95 in this new location. And when we first opened, all the buildings around us were boarded up old industrial buildings. So we were the first one to put new construction and had landscaping and windows and just made a nice environment for our team. And over the past 30 years, the neighborhood around has filled in with some really nice business, residents, organizations. And so we, to me, the decision part was the harder decision. It required more work, more capital, but it was the right choice.
Thank you so much. It was great to hear some of your experiences. And the advice you've offered is something that we can all as students definitely reflect upon and try to apply in our lives as we face obstacles and as we experience adversity. So how do you think we as students could influence change for a more inclusive system?
Go ahead.
So that's a really big, oh, sorry. That's a really big question. And it's great that y'all are thinking about this stuff so early and so young. What I would say is that power tends to replicate itself in its own image. So when you have a power structure where people at the top all look the same way and come from the same backgrounds, they tend to promote people who, unconscious or not, remind them of themselves. And so they'll be like, well, I did a really good job and this young go-getter reminds me of me, so I'm going to promote them. And it just so happens that I am a white upper middle class guy with a college degree who was in a fraternity and is heterosexual and able-bodied and cisgendered. And so I tend to promote people who remind me of myself. And then you end up with these power structures where everyone in power just sort of looks the same. And, you know, we can have debates about whether or not that is intentional discrimination, right? To keep out groups of people. Sorry, I'm having cat issues here. You know, where are they doing this on purpose and intentionally keeping people out of positions of power? Or is this just unconscious bias that they might not even realize that they're doing? In the end, I don't think it really matters because the consequences are the same, which is that women and people of color and queer people are often kept out of positions of power. So one of the things that I want to remind everyone is just keep that in mind when you eventually obtain a position of power, that it's easy to fall into this status quo where we've all been trained to see what is essentially the white male story as the default story and white men as the default citizens of America. And it's not the default story, and that's not the default citizen. And so we need to figure out, in both individually and as a community and as a culture, how to be better at diversifying people who get to make the decisions. And so for you all, I mean, everyone on this panel is either currently a decision maker or is going to grow up to be a decision maker. And so just keeping these issues in mind and being aware of the consequences of your own choices and actions, I think, is a way that everybody can just make the world like a little bit more equal and a little bit better.
I would say one thing you guys can do right now, maybe two things. One is be empathetic towards others. Everyone's weird. I'm really weird. And you know, people have to accept me for who I am, and you guys should accept everyone for who they are, and kind of having that acceptance, putting yourself in someone else's shoes, is very, very helpful to any conflict resolution. The second, I would encourage you, middle school was rough, I remember, socially. Go be inclusive. Go talk to someone. This is hard. This is the hardest thing I think anyone in middle school will ask you to do. Go talk to someone who is not like you, who you are not friends with, who you've maybe said 2 words to in school. I definitely wish I did more You know, go have a conversation with them and try to befriend them, hang out with them a few times. That could do a world, you know, of good later on. Maybe you guys will stay friends, maybe not, but maybe you'll learn something about it. That's my advice.
And to echo that and to add on to that, I think something that's helped me is making sure I check my biases. And I like to think I'm a very inclusive person. I have a wide range of friends who are, you know, very, very diverse, come from very different social, socioeconomic backgrounds, very different backgrounds in general, but I still have biases. And they're often implicit biases that I don't realize. You know, I look at someone and I don't necessarily consciously think about why I have a gut feeling or reaction to what they just said or what they're wearing or whatever, but I try to intentionally, whenever I feel like negatively towards someone or negatively towards something someone said, to like check my bias. Like, why do I feel that way? And then try to reverse my feeling that, and, you know, negative instinct. And I think that can be helpful sometimes, because like even like when middle school and high school, there are plenty of times that I don't think I realized why I may have felt uncomfortable in a situation, or, you know, may have disliked a certain person or disliked a certain class or whatever, but checking what my biases are. And when I grew up, this is my experience, which is why I'm just not familiar with this. So let me expose myself to that and reflect on that a little bit. So yeah, go talk to someone you've never talked to before, say hi, compliment someone's, you know, shoes or pants or whatever. Being different is not necessarily bad. It's just different, and having that diversity is going to help you grow as a person, and it'll help that person too. So I agree with what Rebecca says. It's going to be hard, but got to do it.
And I think my remarks would be more also around going just beyond physical differences or gender differences, but also political differences. I think this country has become so polarized, and there aren't the best examples sometimes between our elected officials, and that we all are one community of Americans that have to live together and work together. And we just should listen a little more and try to understand each side, and not let that political, are you a red or a blue philosophy dictate how you think as well. So, you know, be tolerant for those differences too.
Yeah, so what is your vision for the future of women's empowerment, or for an inclusive system where no one is kept down for their gender, race, sexuality, religion? How do you see the future of this topic?
I want to just say that I've actually witnessed so much progress. So I think the future is very bright. I love seeing where this nation has gone when it comes to diversity and trying to continue to improve that, opening doors for women and you know, people of all races and genders. So I see it as a bright future, and I think we just all have to keep working and recognize that it's important and valuable, and I think things will be very positive.
I would say that, you know, for women to truly be empowered and equal, that means that we have to basically dismantle every form of oppression that exists in American society, because women are a part of every group. And so you can't really address women's equality without also addressing racism and homophobia and transphobia and disability rights and ageism and ableism and virtually every other form of oppression, because women are so diverse. Like, women are a part of every group. And so to really make sure that all women have access to empowerment, positions of power and authority, equal wages, all of those things. And that means that we really have to dismantle all of these different forms of oppression in American society. And I think, you know, when you look at it from that, it just seems so big and so hard and so kind of impossible that it can be easy to just say, like, oh, or how about we just pass another equal pay law? Like, that'd help some women, like, because it is so huge and it's so embedded into our society. But, you know, we have to keep working. We have to keep trying. We have to keep fighting for marginalized women, who, you know, using myself as an example, like, I'm a white, middle-class, able-bodied American woman. I kind of have the most privilege that, like, women have access to in our society. So then it's up to me to look at women who are more marginalized than me and say, like, well, what can I do for them? Like how can I help? At the same time, not trying to speak over anyone or make my voice heard more than other people's voices, but using the privilege that I have to try to help out, you know, women who don't have that. And again, it seems so big, but I'm so encouraged by y'all's younger generations who really seem to have so much of a better handle on these issues of inclusion and diversity and equality than certainly my generation did or my parents' generation. So you all make me very hopeful for the future, and I'll just sort of leave it at that.
I think it's really, really encouraging, even just looking at our parents' generation to my generation to your generation, and seeing how the attitudes differ when it comes to racism, when it comes to like woman empowerment, when it comes to all these political issues. I think it is very hopeful. And I think if I were to go back in time and wonder, like, what could I do? I think I should have been more aware of what was going on politically, just seeing what the movements were and not necessarily participating in like middle school, high school, but just be aware of all that's going on, and be accepting of that. And then similar to what Chelly said, like, not like trying not to fall into this cancel culture where you're like, oh, well, I am a Democrat and therefore anyone who voted for Trump is bad. Like, trying to get this understanding of where people come from, and how we got to where we are today, I think is going to help so much for the future. And so keep doing what you're doing, keep, you know, having these conversations, and challenge yourself to see what's out there, challenge yourself to at least be aware at this point, what things exist.
And I think education is key, for any, you know, for everything to eventually become equal. And we're never going to get there. So, like, if you're a perfectionist, sorry, it's not ever going to be 100%. But a lot of it comes down to, you know, what the curriculums are and were in school, even at Beechwood, right? When we think about history, at least when I was there, we didn't really talk about a lot of the women who, you know, went through and were, you know, how they helped form the world we're in today. And a lot of that, like that wasn't on the AP test in US history either. So there's, maybe that will change. And I think, this is an area of awareness, and hopefully those tests will change too. It's the same thing, and we have Black History Month, but that's often the only time we really talk about Black history in America. And so now we have the internet, and so everyone has the ability to kind of go and educate yourself, make sure you're using good sources, and learn what good sources are, and then try to help educate others and spread cool articles you find about interesting historical figures who are Black or women or LGBTQ, and that in itself is helpful. And then also like meet people who are not like you. And I think that would be really, really helpful. I lived in Spokane, Washington, for a year and a half, and they're like basically Idaho. It's the border. It's super Trumpville. I was there in the 2016 election. And I'm really glad I moved there, because it helped me become, before that point, I really could not see another perspective, and it helped me understand, what their fears are and how they view the world. And I think we could use more of that on both sides of the political spectrum right now, at least.
Thank you for those inspirational words. So as we wrap up, would you like to share anything we didn't ask about?
I guess I would just say two things briefly. One is, don't be afraid to point out unfairness when you see it. And I think that kids have a much more sort of strongly developed sense of fairness than adults do. I think that adults, we get it sort of beaten out of us that like stuff is just not fair. But there's no reason that it shouldn't be fair. And that, when you see something that you don't think is right or you don't think is fair, draw attention to it. Like, see what can be done to make things more fair. Rebecca pointed out that we're never going to get to 100% equality, but I would add to that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And at the same time, like, if you, like, also don't be afraid to ask for help. Like, you are faced with a situation that doesn't feel fair to you, or you're struggling with, or is an obstacle, like, reach out to the support system that you have. And so point out unfairness, don't be afraid to ask for help. That's literally like the best advice I can think of to give to young people these days.
I guess my tidbit would be around email, social media, internet, is in your futures. Don't rely only on that tool for communication, for understanding. I think there are times where it is so critical to have personal contact. And I know the pandemic has set us back, and we do have Zoom and all these wonderful tools to still communicate. But many times meeting people, in whatever personal situations that you can, one-on-one or groups, sometimes the electronic communication can't replace that. So I would say remember that as an important communication tool, a way to understand people, include them, communicate, present yourself. And I think just don't dismiss that as a tool in your toolkit as you go through life.
I think if I could leave one thing, and I talked about this a little bit earlier, but really find your people. Find your people who are always going to support you, no matter how no matter what you do, no matter how much you fail, no matter how much of the wrong thing you did. And then also, like, as you get older, don't be afraid to like let people out of your life who are not helping you do that. I think it's important to know that you don't have to be friends with everybody, and doesn't mean you don't like them or they don't like you, but find your people who are going to support you moving forward, and anyone who is trying to hinder that and your goals, consider not being as close with them.
And I would say adults don't know what we're doing either. So like we're imperfect. Feel free to point that out. It can seem sometimes, or at least when I was in middle school, I thought every adult had everything figured out. That's not true. And so don't be so hard on other people, adults, kids, yourself. That goes a long way. Like, have empathy for yourself too, and that helps you also have empathy for others. And I also just want to thank all the teachers on the call. You guys are awesome. You know, I don't know, teachers are really, really important to society, and I wasn't trying to knock you before, Mr. Holman. And yeah, thanks, Mr. Davis. I see you're on the call, and I think Ms. Norton is on the call too. So.
And Mr. Ristow, hey.
Well, thank you so much for your incredible words. Your stories are truly really inspiring and something we can all learn from. Since we're running out of time, if students or teachers, you have any questions, you could just put them in the chat and we'll try to address them later. And I had also just put in the link for the evaluation survey for students. If you guys could fill that out, that would also be great. And from here, I'll just give it to Asher to conclude today.
Yes, thank you all for giving us your time to enlighten us with your experiences, stories, your knowledge. We loved hearing about your journey and how you got to where you are today. It's inspiring to know that so many accomplished people were once at the middle school where we all are today. And everything all of you are doing is really cool. So thank you everybody for joining us today. Thank you all of the panel members. This is where we're going to wrap it up. All non-panel members, please fill out the evaluation survey. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, and we should point out that Rebecca's coming back in April to talk about environmental issues as we move into more of the environmental issue is our last month. So I know Rebecca's going to come back and do one of those days. So hopefully you can all join us then. And to those of you from outside the district and, you know, in North Carolina and downtown Cleveland and somewhere in Akron, I think, thank you so much for taking time to join us and to, I know it was busy schedules for some of you and you had to get coverage, and it means a lot to us, and it means a lot more to the kids that are here listening, to be exposed to people beyond just their teachers and, you know, their family. To hear other stories is powerful for kids. So I just want to thank you all for taking the time to do that, and continue to do great things in your lives, and we're going to follow you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you
for having me.